How are you feeling?
Well,
How long have you been here?
3 months, May 17th.
And what brought you?
That's difficult to answer.
Could you give me some idea?
I am not completely like other people.
What do you mean by that?
People dislike me because I am not completely like them. I am trying to do with my life something which few people try to do, and this influences my thinking and consequently my action.
What is it you're trying to do with your life?
Play the piano for people.
I'm not clear. How is it that playing the piano for people has eventually resulted in your being here in the hospital?
That's difficult to answer.
this the end? There's a noise inside my head of crying people facing death. Is this the end? Is this the end? I'm burning in the stone. There's no place to hide. I'm burning in the stone. This is the final What have we done to the world? What have we done to the world? I'm burning in the stone. There's no place to hide. I'm burning in the stone. This is the final
All right. Welcome to Spy Stream, ladies and gentlemen. Now, I have very bad news for the people who want to watch over on Twitter, who I hope have found their way over to YouTube. There's some sort of error with StreamYard right now where it is not allowing the stream to go through to Twitter. So this is on StreamYard's end. I'm getting a weird error message on Twitter. So I posted on Twitter, and if people could go on Twitter and share and retweet and that sort of thing, that I'm very sorry, Twitter. It's probably Twitter's fault. I don't know what's going on, but I can't stream over to Twitter right now because I'm getting an error message. I will try to restart the stream again and again. It keeps telling me, just wait a second and it's going to be okay. And I'm like, well, it hasn't been okay so far. So anyway, we are going to be streaming tonight. We are going into a live leftist training. One in the chat, if you have been to Spy Stream before and you know what to expect. Two in the chat if you are brand new to Spy Stream and you've never done this before. One in the chat if you've been to Spy Stream before and you know what we're doing. Two in the chat if this is your first Spy Stream. If this is your first Spy Stream, welcome. We are going to be watching tonight a live training. We are going inside a live organizing call. It is live. I cannot emphasize this enough. We are going in live. This is not pre-recorded. This is live. I do not know what they're going to say. I do not know what they're going to do. I do not know if they're going to say the craziest shit we've ever heard. I do not know if it's going to be incredibly boring. I do not know if they're going to have technical difficulties. I do not know if they're going to start on time. I cannot fix their technical difficulties. I also cannot fix your technical difficulties. I am signed up under a fake name. They don't know who I am. They will probably find out that we're streaming this to the internet before the end of the call, but there's not shit they can do about it because they don't know the fake name that I am signed up under, and I'm also signed up under multiple fake names just in case. Chitalago, thank you for the channel membership. W's to you, bro. Really appreciate that. We're going to be listening in on the call tonight to find out what they have planned, what their focus is. And I promise you, I'm not going to tell you the name of the group yet, but you have all heard of the group that we are watching tonight. You have all heard of them. And just give me 1 second here. Just give me 1 second to do something on my end. Just give me 1 second, please. A moment of patience. Please mount the like button. If you would be so kind, we would appreciate that. That would be rad. Let me just see. Hang on. Hang on. Hang on, hang on. Okay. Bada bing, bada boom. Ooh, actually, hang on one second. Actually. Okay. Guys, I'm going to try not to talk over the training because talking over the training tends to impede our recording of it. But let me just get myself set up here. And thank you guys for joining me tonight. If you feel free, if you want to support my work and make this content continue to be available to everyone as we are making our way through the training tonight, please feel free to send in a super chat or channel memberships. As a reminder, I really do try to not speak during the training, because this is our recording too. So I really do try not to speak during the training. I am going to have the chat on the screen just in case any conservative retards try to steal it from me. But we're going to be watching a training tonight, and sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. Yep. Gotta wait for it to start. I'm going to be putting on my Ferragamo sunglasses tonight, because I feel like for Spy Stream, we need to go darker. I feel like for Spy Stream, I can't wear a nice kind of gradient frame where you can still see my eyes. We're spying here, people. We're spying. Come on. Got my glass of water. I know. I love the Ferragamo ones. They're fucking cool. I love the Ferragamo ones. Ferragamo is the best. Yeah, Stacy is chomping at the bit, waiting to see what we're watching tonight. It's going to be great. Yeah, we're doing important undercover work right now. Let's see if I can stream to Twitter yet. Well, we're waiting. Nope. Twitter's still down. Twitter down. Twitter down. It's over. It's over. Well, the socialists think I have Meta Ray-Bans, but I don't. I actually think that's kind of hilarious. I'm like, no, socialists. I have regular Ray-Bans. I have regular Ray-Bans that are prescription, but I don't actually have Meta Ray-Bans. It's kind of funny that I've made them so incredibly paranoid that they think that way. You guys are going to like this one tonight. I think you guys might be surprised at the one we're doing tonight. I think we haven't done this group yet in a live infiltration. I don't think we've ever done this group in a live infiltration. It's not all over. We're waiting to get let into the Zoom. Yeah, they socialists think I can afford Meta Ray-Bans. Well, maybe I can now, I guess.
What? Absolutely. What? Absolutely. Say it again, yo. What? Absolutely. Listen to me. Listen to me. Wow. Sing only for the Undertaker. To all men. Who wants to die? Wow. Good God, yo. What?
My Substack.
Oh, yeah. What?
a great place when you have additional questions. Let us know if we can get you something more specific.
It ain't nothing but a heartbreaker. Got one friend, that's the undertaker. Many young men's dreams made him disciple to her and me. Life is supposed to be precious. He better fight war each day. War can't give life. Absolutely. Say it again. Lord. Absolutely. Listen to me.
Recording in progress.
Yes, it is.
Please come and understand. They say we must fight to keep our freedom, but
Oh, I'm really going to stop talking once it actually starts. We're having fun here. If you guys make good comments during the spy stream, I'll display them on the screen.
That was Edwin Starr performing the hit song War, an anti-war song. And I just want to welcome everyone and say hello. My name is Cameron. I'm an organizer with the Party for Socialism and Liberation based in Los Angeles. And I want to encourage you, since there's so many people in this chat, please drop a message in the chat sharing where you're calling in from. Again, I'm Cameron in Los Angeles, and I help organize our PSL Action Network webinars, which happen on the third Wednesday of every month. So mark your calendar for next Wednesday. And sometimes we hold additional webinars like these when the political moment demands it. It's amazing to see all of these cities flowing in faster than I can even count, already over 100 messages. And it's great to see so many people on tonight's webinar because the political moment demands a lot from us right now. We're all very busy people, and we are building a movement against this US war on Iran. This morning, it has been confirmed that the US military committed the February 28th missile strike on an Iranian elementary school that massacred at least 175 people, most being little girls. The US and Israel have pummeled Iranian schools, hospitals, neighborhoods with their airstrikes, killing at least 1,200 people across Iran. The US government has billions of dollars for death and destruction, but never enough money to meet our needs. And it's up to us, working class people all over this country, to change that. Tonight, we're going to hear from three amazing speakers and organizers. We're going to hear from Shani Abadi with the Answer Coalition, Leanne Fulehan with the People's Forum, and Claudia de la Cruz with the Party for Socialism and Liberation. They're going to help us better understand the context and the cost of this war and what we can do to build a mass movement to stop it. After the presentations, we're going to do a Q&A session, so be sure to stick around until the end, and you can submit questions using the Zoom Q&A function at the bottom of your screen at any time. So without further ado, let us hear from our first speaker, Shani Abadi, an Iranian-American anti-war activist with the Answer Coalition, who will tell us about the current state of the war and what it has already cost in human life, ecological destruction, and economic chaos. Welcome, Shani.
Thank you, Cameron. As Cameron said, my name is Shani. I'm an organizer with the Answer Coalition based out of Los Angeles, and I was born in Tehran. I am an Iranian-American immigrant, a longtime organizer, proud to join this panel tonight and to be in this movement against Trump's war on Iran. We find ourselves now 12 days into the US-Israeli war, and the scale of destruction and devastation is unprecedented, and once again has put on full display the brutality and violence of US imperialism. On February 28th, late in the night here, the United States and Israel ignited a new war on Iran, launching airstrikes across multiple cities in the region. And so far, US targets have included hospitals, elementary schools, civilian residential areas, critical water and industrial infrastructure, and the destruction of cultural sites older than both the United States and Israel combined. The United States is dropping thousands of bombs per day on Iran, with estimates putting the cost of war close to $1 billion being spent daily to wage war abroad. Yet in the first 2 days of war alone, the US burned through about $5.6 billion worth of bombs. In fact, that is about how much it would have cost to fund free buses in New York City for over 8 years. On the first day of this war, the United States, in a shameful act, targeted an all-girls school in Manab, killing over 170 young girls who would not return to their families later in the day.
Trump.
Fragments from the Tomahawk missile that struck the school showed that it was made in Dayton, Ohio, where millions of families across Ohio struggle to get by without health care, livable wages, or affordable housing, because the bombs had to be made in Dayton, Ohio. The death tolls continue to soar. US-Israeli airstrikes have targeted over 10,000 civilian sites in Iran, have killed over 1,300 Iranian civilians, and injured over 12,000 more. In response to the attacks, Iran has struck US bases across the Gulf states and Israeli targets in the region. The US has military bases lining all across the border of Iran and all over the Middle East. The US military has maintained a presence in the region for decades, with several tens of thousands of US troops stationed across 19 bases encircling Iran. At least 7 US service members have been killed in this war, and over 100 more wounded. The White House refuses to rule out a boots-on-the-ground invasion, but it is not the children of the US billionaires or politicians being sent in to do the killing and the dying. It's the children of working families who would be used as fodder for a rich man's war. Also, on the very first day of this war, US-Israeli joint strikes targeted and assassinated Iranian Supreme Leader Ayatollah Khamenei in a major act of escalation. The first time that the US has directly assassinated a sitting head of state in the modern era. And his son, Mojtaba Khamenei, has now taken his place in a succession that appears to signify broad unity among the population against this war. The Iranian response has been one of resilience. There are thousands of Iranians coming out into the main streets of Tehran to rally against this war, to welcome in a new leader, and to mourn the deaths of military commanders and civilians all across the country. These massive outpourings from Iranians are occurring amid active airstrikes in broad daylight in the skies above them. But yet, the masses of Iranians are fearless and continue to demonstrate in the streets with a clear message that they reject foreign interference at the hands of US-Israeli bombs and military bombardment, and that they will defend their homeland at any cost. This war has also created a global environment disaster. Airstrikes on Iranian oil facilities released fossil fuels and pollutants into the air, the water supplies, as fires erupted across Tehran. The photos are horrific. If you have seen them, the smoke from the attacks resemble hellish, large black plumes that covered the entire sky and turned day into night. For the next few days, there was black, oily, toxic rain falling across parts of the country, covering cars and rooftops, being inhaled by the population, risking potentially long-term adverse health impacts. This is a tactic waged by the US war machine often. The contamination from US bombs dropped in the Iraq War have resulted in generational birth defects and cancers in Iraq that persist to this day. The US military, clearly the world's largest polluter, every day of this war produces dire environmental impacts that continue to spread and may last for years. While the Trump administration has been acting with impunity to impose US dominance on sovereign nations around the world, the war continues to escalate, causing disruptions that threaten rising energy and gas prices reaching every corner of the world economy. In response to US attacks, Iran closed the Strait of Hormuz, a central shipping artery for global oil shipments. Over 20% of global natural gas and 30% of the world's crude oil passes through the strait. And we've already begun to see the immediate impacts on the global economy as the price per oil barrel has shot up over $100 per barrel for the first time in 4 years, and the costs of gas are expected to climb higher and higher the longer this war drags on. Here in Los Angeles, we're seeing the shock at gas stations as prices have risen every day since the start of this war. We're now seeing an average of $5.38 a gallon. This is almost a full dollar increase per gallon from last month's average of $4.52. Oil and gas are critical for the global supply chain. They fuel fertilizers for agriculture, irrigation, trucks, tractors, electricity, and transport. Disruptions in the supply chain means that the cost of US war is going to fall on the backs of US taxpayers. Every time you fill up your tank to get to work or buy food to put on your family's table, with no end game in sight. No war happens in isolation, and further disruption has a very real potential to crash the global economy through rising inflation and mass economic uncertainty, perpetuating an already worsening cost of living crisis here in the States, affecting the cost of basic goods, groceries, healthcare, and housing. These economic trends are bound to create an impossible situation for so many working people in the US who are living paycheck to paycheck, struggling to make ends meet as it is, and will now be expected to shoulder the cost of this war while Boeing, Raytheon, Lockheed Martin executives are busy lining their pockets. The Trump administration has thrown out several different reasons in a weak attempt to justify this war to the American people. Secretary of State Marco Rubio first said that the US had to launch preemptive strikes to neutralize Iranian capabilities because they knew Israel was going to attack anyway. And the narrative from the White House has continued to shift. We have yet to receive a clear explanation, and we should never expect to receive one because there is no justification for this war. There is no justification except to extend the domination of US billionaires over Iran and the entire Middle East. The US and Israel have tried for decades to manufacture consent for military action against Iran. They've attempted to influence mass public opinion through decades of anti-Iran hysteria and propaganda for regime change. They've attempted to point to Iran's nuclear program, despite the US's own intelligence reports assessing that Iran was not building a nuclear weapon nor in possession of one. Iran's facilities have routinely been inspected by international authorities and bound by treaties, such as the 2015 Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, which Trump himself ripped up 2 years into its implementation. In renewed negotiations just before the bombs dropped, a deal was on the table, but the US backed out and instead chose war. This is not due to a failure of diplomacy, but a war of choice, a war of aggression by Trump to punish Iran and to make lives for Iranian people even more difficult, to get officials back to the negotiating table, to simply bend to the wishes of US and Israel. Iran poses no threat to the people of the United States. The real threat to working people is in the White House. The real threat is Trump and the billionaires willing to sacrifice American lives for the sake of oil and profit. They are who will benefit from this war, not us. The majority of American people are sick and tired of endless war. The majority of Iranians are against this war. The majority of Iranians are against this war on our homeland, where many of our friends and families still live. US bombs did not bring liberation to Iraq or Libya. They did not bring prosperity to Afghanistan, Syria, or Gaza, and they will certainly not bring either to Iran. They will tell us we cannot afford universal healthcare, we cannot afford housing for all, cannot afford free education, that these are lofty pie-in-the-sky goals. But we can always afford another war. We can afford $1 billion a day to be sent to bomb Iran. That is not a coincidence. This is a choice being made by the war criminals in the White House, not by the American people. So I urge you all to join us in this movement, to join us in the streets and in our communities, to demand hands off Iran, stop the war, and feed the people. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Shani, for explaining the real goals of this war: regime change and profits for the super rich. While the Trump administration lies every single day about its crimes, you made it so clear that for the sake of the people of Iran, the United States, and the entire world, we must build a movement to stop this war. Next, we're going to hear from Leon Fulehan, the education director at the People's Forum in New York City and a leading organizer of the Shut It Down for Palestine Coalition. Leon is going to speak to us about the US-Israeli collaboration on this war and what that should help us understand about US foreign policy more broadly. Welcome, Leon.
Thanks so much, Cameron, and thank you, Shani, for a really, really insightful and important analysis of where the war is today. So I want to talk a little bit about, I want to zoom out a bit and talk about the connection of this war to US foreign policy and its relationship to Israel. Now, Trump is very proud of his war on Iran. He's very proud of his so-called achievements. He is talking about this war like it is a very bold and decisive and brave act by a bold and decisive president. His narrative is that he alone can do what he did, and that he's righting the wrongs of all the previous administrations that didn't take the action that he took. Now, these statements are true, and they're also false. It's true that this is Trump's war in the sense that the Trump administration makes enormous and very consequential decisions based on Trump himself and his whims and his desires, his instincts, his impulses, his feelings. He is probably one of the presidents that has been the most dismissive of the broader ruling class, more than any other president, I would say, in quite some time. He doesn't wait for deliberations. He doesn't follow process. He has a very small, tight circle. Pete Hegseth, Marco Rubio, Jared Kushner, Steve Witkoff. He has a small group of friends, a cast of characters that could change day by day, but a small group that really shapes his thinking and then that carries out the things that he wants to be carried out. Other sections of the ruling class are very startled by this. They feel left out. They are so-called concerned. So yes, this chapter of the war on Iran is Trump's war. But that doesn't mean that if we just support the Democratic Party and try to replace Trump with a Democrat, that this situation will change. That doesn't mean that we have to just support the Democrats and wait for them to enter the room and bring us back to process. The buildup to this war is decades in the making, and it reflects a consensus that spans both ruling class parties. What made it possible for Trump to act so recklessly is not just his personality alone. It's an ongoing bipartisan project to turn Iran from a sovereign nation into one that will bend to the will of US foreign policy and be an open field to generate profits for the capitalists who make up the American ruling class. We can just look at how the Democrats are responding right now to Trump's actions to see that this is true. You have Josh Gottheimer of New Jersey, who celebrated the strikes on Iran, said it's decisive action to defend our national security. Jared Moskowitz of Florida has been trashing the War Powers Resolution. He's calling it the Ayatollah Protection Act. John Fetterman of Pennsylvania has been condemning the Democratic Party for not backing the bombing enthusiastically enough. Schumer, Hakeem Jeffries, Alyssa Slotkin, Mark Kelly, I could keep going. They're all complaining about the fact that Trump didn't go to them first, but they are, in every complaint, they couch it with plenty of paragraphs about how Iran is an existential threat to Israel and it's a menace that must be confronted. There's only a few voices out there like Bernie Sanders who are saying stop the war in Iran, but they're not making proposals for how to stop it. They're not calling something. The truth is that while parts of the ruling class may disagree over Trump's process, the larger war on Iran, and in fact, the larger war on the entire Middle East region, has been part of the agenda of US imperialism for a very long time. To demonstrate this, I want to turn back the clock a little bit and go to 2007, when retired General Wesley Clark revealed a classified Pentagon memo from November 2001, just a few weeks after 9/11, that outlined a plan to overthrow 7 governments in 5 years. Those 7 governments were Iraq, Syria, Lebanon, Somalia, Sudan, and Iran. The memo that he revealed to the public exposed what millions of people across the Middle East region and the anti-war movement here in the United States already knew. It exposed that all the invasions, the interventions, all the proxy wars that had devastated the Middle East all throughout the 2000s and that would continue in the 2010s, they were not reactive responses to terrorism. They were the deliberate implementation of a preconceived US foreign policy agenda. The strategy that the memo outlined is something called Balkanization, which means fragmenting states along any kinds of lines of division, ethnic division, sectarian division, tribal lines, whatever the US can find to divide up the unity of a nation, they will do it. And this is the oldest tool in the imperialist playbook British and French employed this exact strategy after World War I, World War II, when they carved up the Middle East region and tried to prevent any unity across the region. And now, a century later, the United States and with their junior partner Israel are using the same logic. They do this because they want to keep the region weak. They want to keep access open to the natural resources, in particular oil and gas, keep their military bases operational, and make sure that no government in the region can challenge U.S. economic dominance or challenge U.S. policy. Now, if you go down the list of those 7 countries in the Pentagon memo from 2001, you can see how the plan has been carried out. It took a lot longer than 5 years, but it was carried out. So Iraq was invaded in 2003. The state was deliberately dismantled. Its army was dissolved. Its society was split along sectarian lines, and the unity of Iraq was undermined. Libya was destroyed in 2011. They called it a humanitarian intervention. What happened was NATO, with the US at the helm, actually destroyed one of the strongest, the most prosperous state in the African continent into now a failed territory. Sudan was fragmented systematically until the 2011 partition created South Sudan, took away 75% of Sudan's oil revenue. Somalia has been subjected to US military operations since 1991 with no resolution. It's still going on today, only continuing to fragment Somalia. And then in 2023, now just 3 years ago, 2.5 years ago, the genocide in Gaza opened a new chapter in US-Israeli joint aggression on the Middle East. Now, I just want to pause for a second because there's a very common argument that I've been hearing a lot now in the past couple of days, which is that Israel has dragged the United States into this war, that Israel is calling the shots, that Israel is determining and is pulling the United States into another endless war. Basically, that the tail wags the dog, and that without the Israel lobby, the US might be pursuing a more rational, peaceful policy in the Middle East. This, in my opinion, is exactly backwards, and it gives the United States cover for its role, its leading role in sponsoring wars and death and destruction all across the Middle East.
They're still worried
Israel
about
was founded as and has always functioned as the watchdog of imperialism. First, when it was the British Empire that was the main imperialist power, it was the watchdog for the British Empire, and now for the United States. The United States Israel doesn't drag the United States into anything. In fact, the United States is giving billions of dollars annually in military aid, giving diplomatic cover at the United Nations, sharing intelligence. All of this is not for charity. The United States is doing this as an investment. Israel is a forward operating base for US imperialism.
Wow.
So when we look backwards and we talk about what happened since 2023, the genocide in Gaza, we have to be very clear about the US role. Israeli military was pulling the triggers and doing the killing. Netanyahu's giving lots of speeches, but the bombs are American, the guns are American, the fighter jets are from the United States, the diplomatic shield is provided by the United States. Biden and now Trump authorized every single phase of the genocide. And the genocide was never just about Gaza. If it was just about Gaza, the United States probably wouldn't have subsidized it. It was taking advantage of what is going on in Gaza to open a new and much more violent phase of the regional restructuring project that the United States wanted to complete, that it had tried to complete in 5 years, but it wasn't able to do so. And you can see what happened. And during the genocide, Israel, with the authorization of the United States, invaded Lebanon for the 6th time since 1978, devastated the south of the country, assassinated much of the leadership of Hezbollah, the resistance forces in Lebanon. Even after there was a ceasefire reached, Israel has been still to this day carrying out near daily strikes in Lebanese territory and now has started a new ground invasion. Then also in late 2024, the United States engineered again the fall of the government in Syria, which opened the path for a much more compliant government to take power, representing one of the probably most significant strategic victories for this so-called segmentation, balkanization project since the invasion of Iraq. Syria being turned over into something much more compliant to the United States made it so that the land bridge connecting Lebanon to Iraq and Iran was no longer operational. Palestinian forces were no longer able to operate from Syria. Of course, the feeling of anti-imperialism, the spirit of anti-colonialism, the spirit of resistance and resilience against invasion and occupation, that's not going anywhere. That's still dominant among the societies across the Middle East. And the Palestinian people, by simply surviving the genocide until this day and staying on their lands, have prevented the US and Israel from fully reaching all of their objectives. But if you look at what happened, you can see that the United States has managed to severely weaken and damage the project of national sovereignty in the region one by one. So if we go back to that list from Wesley Clark, Iraq, Libya, Syria, Sudan, Somalia, Lebanon, all of them have been severely fragmented or weakened up until today. Much of this has happened in the past few years. Of the 7 countries that were named in that memo, Iran is the only one that's left. So now Iran is the last target. And in 2025, in June, Trump and Israel launched an assault. They hit hundreds of targets. They caused massive death and destruction. The US used B-2 stealth bombers and cruise missiles, major weaponry. Trump announced a ceasefire just a few days later, but not because the war machine had a change of heart, because at that time it was untenable to continue. The aggression on Iran was met with outrage from every sector. Over 65% of Americans opposed the strikes. The PSL and TPF and Answer Coalition and all of the coalition of organizations that had been organizing against the genocide in Palestine activated again, and people took into the streets in dozens of cities all across the country within 24 hours of those strikes in June. In Iran, the people banded together. They rose up across differences and rallied together in defense of national sovereignty. And the allies of the United States in the region, Saudi Arabia included, said, we don't want a war right now. The political terrain made it untenable for him to continue, but that was temporary. And we can see that because now it's started again, as Shani has described. This could be, we don't know how this is going to turn out. It could be it could be a very long war. Trump could try to end it in a few days, but he may not be able to. This could actually be a very long war. The United States intends to finish what it started and finish going through that list of countries. Trump is a wild card. He decides what he wants to do, but the options that he has to choose from have been set by the US ruling class for many decades before him. So knowing this, knowing that the solution, the answer to war cannot be found in either of the 2 ruling class parties, cannot be found in the Republican Party or in the Democratic Party. What do? Well, we have to turn then to the people. We have to turn to the workers, to the immigrants, to the students, to the teachers, to our communities. We have to turn to the people who make this country run to find the solution. We have to turn to our forces to make the change because the ruling class will not do so. And this is already the most unpopular war in modern US history. The numbers are staggering. The vast majority of people do not want this war to continue. Trump's war is very, very unpopular. And the movement for Palestine has completely transformed the way people understand US foreign policy in this country. It showed an entire generation and the broader population that both the Democrats and Republicans are the authors of death, destruction, and genocide. Excuse me. It feels like just yesterday that Biden was denying the death count in Gaza and claiming that the Palestinian people bombed their own hospitals. Now Trump is doing it again. He's saying that he doesn't think that the United States bombed the schools, the school, and he's denying the reality on the ground. This playbook is completely tired and people can see through it. But knowing this is not enough. Knowing that the system is rotten does not by itself stop the war. We need to build the consciousness and inspire people to turn their outrage and opposition into action. We have to be the ones that say, your action matters, your voice matters, and we have to take to the streets, we have to take action. not because the politicians care about what we think, but because we are the ones who run society and we are the ones who will create change. If we can build together, if we can act together, we can do it. And I'll stop there. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much, Leanne. That was very well said, very educational, and you've been a powerful voice in the anti-war movement. We're very happy to get the opportunity to hear you speak today. And thank you for exposing that the long-term U.S.-Israeli partnership, including their collaboration on the genocide in Gaza and this war against Iran, make it clear that all the cases of U.S. aggression and militarism abroad are branches of the same imperialist system. And that's why we're fighting for a new system here today. And our last speaker before our Q&A will be Claudia de la Cruz, the 2024 presidential candidate of the Party for Socialism and Liberation and an organizer with the PSL. Claudia will speak about what lessons we can learn from past anti-war movements and what we can all do today to help build the movement against this war. Please welcome Claudia.
Thank you so much, Cameron. And thank you, Shani and Leanne. And also thank everyone for joining us. The tremendous response reflected in the high number of registrations is a clear demonstration of the deep concern that we all share in these urgent times. It's clear that people are paying close attention to this administration's escalation, not only in terms of attacking and launching war against Iran, but also attacking and launching war against so many other nation states around the world. I was asked to speak about the lessons from anti-war movements and our tasks as people of consciousness at this moment. And so I will first and foremost say that anti-war movements do not end war immediately. They fundamentally shift the political ground and make the continuation of war politically unsustainable. The movement must become so large, morally coherent, and persistent in our demand that we become unavoidable. And public opinion obviously is one that matters, and we need to understand that, but it only matters if it's organized. So we need to be able to move collectively in organized struggle. I think Leanne mentioned that towards the end of her presentation. We need to rebuild a strong anti-war and anti-imperialist movement, which is ultimately what will guarantee the end of forever wars. We can find many lessons from a long history of anti-war movements in this country. And I'm going back to the Anti-Imperialist League of the 1800s, to the war, the movement against the war on Vietnam, to the movement against the war on Iraq, to the recent 2.5 years of struggle against the ongoing genocide in Gaza. And we would be here a long, long time if we were to go through the many lessons. So I just want to highlight 4 lessons from the anti-war movements that can serve us in today's reemergence, re-strengthening of the anti-war movement. The first one is the need to make connections. It is necessary to connect the hardships of the working class people at home who are struggling, and their struggles are produced by the same capitalist system and politicians that consistently put profit over people and are the same ones that are manufacturing war abroad. So we need to think about this as war on 2 fronts. The anti-war movement cannot be kept abstract or distant from the experiences of working class people in the United States, despite the echo chamber that the Trump administration wants to create to make us believe that they are the majority, that they represent the masses of people in the United States. We need to know that this war on Iran is not backed by the majority of people in the United States. We are not in a fringe position or at a disadvantage in our opposition to this war. According to recent polls, 53% of voters oppose US military action against Iran. And the previous speakers have emphasized that. The people of the United States don't want this war. The people of Iran don't want this war. And the people of the region in the Middle East do not want this war either, because this will mean the expansion of terror, of destruction, of death in that region. Our task, people in the United States, is then to organize the discontent of the people who are working against the militarization of our streets, who are organizing for immigrant rights, who are organizing to defend our democratic rights, the people who are appalled by the levels of unemployment and the lack of affordability, and make the connection to the grotesque investment of US government in war and destruction against working class people around the world. 4 days, just 4 days of the war on Iran cost US taxpayers over $1 billion. It is inconceivable that the US government administration can use our collective wealth to bomb other countries and not guarantee the people of this country a dignified life. No healthcare, no education, no affordable housing, no childcare, but they can bomb children in Iran, in Gaza, in Lebanon. There is no money, according to them, but it's not that there isn't any money. Working people are the priority. War and profit are their priority. And we need to make those connections with our people. And believe me, they will understand that. During the Vietnam War, the consciousness of the masses of people shifted when they began to see the caskets of killed soldiers returning home. These were the sons of working people used as cannon fodder. We need to continue to remind people that it is working class young people who are drafted with promises of things that they should have had, should have been granted in the first place, without having to sacrifice their lives or having to kill other people. And these things are a college education, a salary, housing, and everything that they're afforded as human beings. These are the people who will die, and these are the young people who will be killing other young working class people in Iran. And this is something that we need to bring and uplift to our communities, that our young people should not continue to be used as cannon fodder to fight a war that does not benefit people in Iran or people in the United States. The second lesson that I want to uplift today is that, we need to be able to cut through the lies. We need to expose the rinse and repeat propaganda that is used to justify the war. And how we do that is important. We need to recognize that our people have been, in many ways, brainwashed. There's been an imposition of ideas and values that are not necessarily inherently theirs. And so when the warmongers say things like, we are doing this to save women or to liberate people from dictatorships, or when they say things like, this is a war against enemy states or terrorists or dictators, we need to ask our people to reflect on the meaning of these concepts and how they are more relevant to US government administrations than to those who the US government administrations label as their enemy. The US has historically utilized the concept of humanitarianism to justify the infinite supply of 2,000-pound bombs being dropped, again, on civilians. And historically, the United States has not bombed or sanctioned any country into democracy or freedom. We need to be clear on that, and we need to stand confidently in that argument because it's factual. The warmongers will say things like, the people that we are, the folks that we're fighting, those that we're fighting against, those that we're launching this war against are animals, are terrorists. Dehumanization becomes a weapon. Before any atrocity is done, the target population or their leaders are dehumanized or ridiculed. It happened, at the beginning, and it continues to happen with the ongoing genocide in Gaza. It has happened to justify aggressions on Venezuela and the kidnapping of a president, a sitting president, a popularly elected president, of another country. I mean, it happened in Iraq, it happened in Libya, and we could keep going and going. Historically, the United States government administrations have done this. They humanize others. And we need to center the shared humanity with our siblings across the seas and counteract this narrative. And there is, we could uplift ways in which this was done. During the many bombings, there were the names of the children who had been found under the rubble or killed by Israeli bombs that were uplifted in social media and other places. We need to put names on those dead bodies. We need to uplift the images of these children under the rubble. We must make sure that the public sees victims of war as human beings with lives, with dreams, whose futures were taken, futures were stolen by US imperialism. The warmongers will say things like, this is an isolated incident. The media treats each of these bombings separately from any historical context. We need to do the job of educating ourselves and educating our communities and bringing forth the historical context. The genocide in Palestine cannot be divorced from a 75-plus-year-old history of occupation and apartheid. The war on Iran cannot be divorced from a long history of US empire wanting to consolidate its dominance in that region and utilizing, in many ways, the colonial state of Israel as an instrument to do that. We must consistently provide context for our people. We must consistently provide history. That means that we need to educate ourselves on that history. And third, building broad coalitions is highly important. Anti-war movements have included students, labor unions, clergy, veterans, and workers of all kinds. It is not easy or comfortable to build coalition. Those of us who organize know this, because not everyone will agree on everything, and not everyone has to agree on everything, and they shouldn't. It is important for organizations to maintain their integrity while building strategic and principled unity across organizations and fronts of struggle. It is important to understand that power comes in moving millions, and doing so requires more than just one organization or one set of group of people. It requires different sectors working together towards the same goal. And it also requires a multiplicity of tactics, but one strategy. We need to be able to, yes, march. The Answer Coalition mobilized hundreds of thousands of people in the early 2000s against the war in Iraq. We need to do civil disobedience. During the Vietnam War, there were sittings, there were draft resistance, there were student encampments, there was advocacy and lobbying campaigns. All of these served a purpose and reached different people. But all of these are important tactics that must be connected to, again, one strategy. We need to be able to utilize these tactics to build a movement. If what we're doing does not build a movement, then it goes against building it. And it's disruptive for us collectively. We need to work towards building movement and building organization. Because in building organization, we have the ability to not only maintain the memory of previous struggles, but also gain the skills for another stage of struggle. The fourth and last lesson that I think is highly important and is connected to an initiative that I'll be sharing with you is mass education. We need to be able to reach people wherever they are and move them into organized struggle. We cannot afford to do things in isolation. We cannot afford to do things as individuals alone anymore. We are living in moments of high stakes, and our people need to understand that we're stronger together. And so mass education and outreach is highly important for that. We need to be able to go where the people are, the subways, the schools, the bus stations, residential buildings, union meetings, church services. Our ability to connect and organize other people affirms that we're not a fringe movement, affirms that we're not a small group of people. but in fact that the small group of people are the ones that are utilizing political and economic power to keep us divided and keep us weak. We are actually the stronger ones. The use of social media platforms is highly important to break through the misinformation, the support of independent media that is putting out analysis that is actually, again, helping build movement, helping build organization, and helping political clarity in this moment. We have another responsibility, which is we cannot allow for momentum to dissipate when we get concessions. Many times when we are in struggle and we win one thing, whether it is an agreement has been reached or a ceasefire has been reached, the energy dissipates. We cannot lose sight of the system that keeps manufacturing war. We must be anti-war and anti-imperialist. Opposition alone is not a program. And imperialism is a program of the US capitalists. So the people of the United States need to have a program that's anti-imperialist, which connects to our struggle against the capitalist system in this country. And there goes the connection of the domestic and the international. We need to be able to hold that our plan is to build a socialist future that is internationalist and that is against empire building. We cannot afford the division and a division and fragmentation of the movement. We must have the capacity to build bridges in our differences, which means that we might find ourselves making unexpected alliances to be able to advance this anti-war movement. And again, we don't have to agree in everything. We cannot wait for the perfect grouping of people. We cannot wait for the perfect plan. We don't have the affordability of time. The increased aggression of US imperialism, not only in the region of the Middle East, but around the world, is grounded on desperation. And it makes it really, really dangerous. They are grounded on desperation, not strength. And the need to guarantee its continued dominance around the world. What is happening in Iran is not disconnected from the aggressions against Venezuela. It is not disconnected from the continued strangulation of Cuba's economy. $15 million a day are stolen from the Cuban economy. It is not disconnected from the war against working class people here in the United States. This is about the complete domination of entire populations, their resources and destiny, all for profit. The people of the United States have a historic role to play in making it impossible for US capitalists, US imperialists to continue business as usual. They cannot continue business as usual while our lives and the lives of millions around the world are being threatened daily. We have a huge responsibility to make it impossible for them to continue business as usual. We don't have the luxury of waiting. I'll say that again. We don't have the luxury of waiting for the perfect moment, for the perfect movement, with the perfect coalition, with the perfect plan. Our task is to learn from history and build a strong anti-war, anti-imperialist movement now. There is an initiative, and I'm inviting folks to go to stoptrumpswars.org and join the necessary work of organizing wherever you are, with whatever group of people you are with. Organize the discontent into a strong anti-war movement that will put an end to the war in Iran and to the US war machine. That is our responsibility. And if we don't do it, the question becomes, who will? Thank you.
Thank you so much, Claudia. And, just like you said, we need to mobilize and organize in the millions, working toward the same goal, which is stopping this war. And we can only stop Trump's war by building and organizing people's discontent in the right direction. The answer is not a war on Iran. The answer is not a war on Gaza, a war on immigrants, a war on Black America. The answer is that we need a new system, and that is what we are fighting to build. So please check out the website that was dropped in the chat. We encourage you to check that out. And definitely don't leave, because we still have a Q&A that's coming up. We've gotten some really, really interesting questions. And before we get to the Q&A, I want to tell all of you about the PSL Action Network, which I mentioned at the beginning of the webinar. The Action Network is a way for everyone to get involved in actually building the socialist movement, building the anti-war movement. As we heard in Claudia's presentation, the US capitalist system is addicted to war. It's a fundamental feature of US capitalism. This means that we don't only build a movement against war, but actually for a new system, one where the needs of people on our planet are prioritized above rich men's wars, rich men's profits, and the cares of oil executives and weapons manufacturers. The PSL is building that movement today and every single day. And that socialist movement is so important. And actually, we need you to be a part of it. That's the only way it can be possible, is if all of the people who are on this webinar and the people in our communities and beyond actually join the movement and become a part of something bigger. Many people in this webinar are already a part of the Action Network. Please comment in the chat if you're part of the Action Network. It's very exciting, and it makes me very happy to see that over 1,000 people were able to join today. And if you are not already in the Action Network, you should sign up right now. We're going to drop the link in the chat. It's pslweb.org/action. You can join today in just a matter of seconds. Members of the Action Network receive materials every single month to use in daily conversations about important political issues. They get invitations to monthly webinars and calls to action in order to help build the movement. So we encourage everyone who's in the Action Network to actually take action and get involved in talking to your communities, using the talking points that you hear tonight, but also the materials that you get sent to you by joining the Action Network. They're really beautiful. We show them at all of our monthly Action Network webinars. And understand that Action Network members also make a monthly financial contribution in order to build the socialist movement. Billionaires use their billions of dollars to keep the working class down. So we need to pool our resources together to build a movement capable of actually fighting back and winning. So before our Q&A, I want to give everyone a minute to sign up for the Action Network right now at pslweb.org/action. We're going to play a short video as we give you the time to do that.
Right now, so much is at risk. Our public schools, our healthcare, our essential social programs, our civil rights, all under constant attack by Trump and his administration. Many of us are looking to fight back and find the Democratic Party missing in action.
These attacks against us will only end if the people take a stand together to stop it. What we do is decisive. If you want to join the struggle against Trump's billionaire agenda for a more just society, sign up for the PSL Action Network today.
As an Action Network member, you'll receive invitations to monthly webinars where we discuss how to understand current events. Every month, you'll also receive packets containing literature, stickers, posters, and other materials that can prepare you to have effective conversations about politics with your family, friends, coworkers, and neighbors.
These billionaires are not just greedy people. They are the products of a capitalist system that is designed to funnel wealth and power to a tiny elite, no matter how much harm that causes. To win, we need to build a powerful movement to organize society around new priorities, meeting the needs of people and the planet. A socialist movement.
Join our movement of everyday people learning and making a difference together.
The socialist movement is growing, and you can help it grow more by joining the PSL Action Network today.
All right. So once again, thank you to everyone who is already a part of the Action Network, everyone who just joined. I saw that some people already chose that moment to join the Action Network. We encourage you to do so right now. And we're about to jump into our Q&A, which is your opportunity to hear some of the answers to some of your questions. Of course, with so many people on this webinar, we're not going to be able to get to every single question, but we encourage for these conversations to continue. So what we're going to do is bring up our three panelists who did these wonderful presentations, and we're going to now have a discussion. So it's good to see all of you, Claudia, Shani, Leanne. So there's so many questions, but I wanted to start with this one. There was someone in the chat who basically said, I don't think we should fight a war to change a regime, but this person also has some issues with the government. They're conflicted, I would say. And you all explained really beautifully why this war harms the people across the globe and why it needs to stop. So for people who are having conversations on the streets and, running into this type of question, what are your top points to focus on against the war for regime change? And of course, anyone can go ahead and answer it. And let's go ahead.
Thanks, Cameron. I'd like to start, and I think this is, a good question to ask because I think, a lot of us here are based in the United States. We're in the core of the imperial giant that's, waging these attacks and is responsible for waging all these wars abroad. And, for me, I think of myself as really centering my role as an Iranian American here in the United States, having to really, provide the foundation for myself to speak to others that the United States is in no position of moral authority itself to dictate the terms by which Iranians can exercise their self-determination. The US speaks so much of women's rights. Well, look at the significant repression of women's rights here in the United States following the overturning of Roe v. Wade, following the massive, women's rights abuses in our detention centers and our jails. The US is in no position to dictate human rights when, this past year we've seen ICE agents in our streets and communities kidnap our immigrant neighbors and shoot peaceful protesters dead in front of our eyes. And, the US, I think, has been the single largest perpetrator of human rights abuses in the Middle East. Decades of crippling US sanctions on Iran and its economic partners have resulted in the worst economic crisis in recent times facing the people of Iran. It's one of the most heavily sanctioned countries in the world. And sanctions themselves are a form of economic warfare. So, the long-standing effects have contracted the Iranian economy. This puts a lot of pressure on the people of any nation when really it should have been a flourishing sovereign nation with the extensive resources and oil on its land. Secretary of the Treasury, Scott Bessent, even admitted to US involvement in manipulating the markets of Iran to plunge its currency rate to a record low. This forced shopkeepers to close their shops, made the cost of food rise 72% in the past year. This all amounts to deep unrest, and the US cannot accept the sovereignty and the self-determination of the Iranian people. In fact, in 1953, right, the US conducted its first official coup d'etat to overthrow a democratically elected leader, Mohammad Mossadegh, prime minister of Iran, upon his attempts to nationalize the oil, to take Iran's oil back from imperialist control for the Iranian people. The US simply could not accept that. And I want to plug an episode of the Socialist program titled Operation Ajax if you want to understand the history of modern Iran in depth. This is really excellent political education from an anti-imperialist perspective so that you may understand the conditions that have brought us to this day at the hands of US imperialist control.
All right, that's excellent. Really appreciate you highlighting that episode, especially because I feel the Trump administration tries to hide a lot of history. That's why they want to attack history programs in the United States. But they also don't want to talk about the over a century of imperialist intervention in the Middle East and how much chaos and destabilization and devastation it's caused. That episode is really excellent for really illuminating that and bringing out the US's role in actually making life so much worse for Iranian people. So with that, I think we can go ahead to our next question. So this is a historically unpopular war, as has been pointed out, right? Even at the beginning and the onset of this phase of war on the people of Iran, many people are saying that they won't fight for Israel. They won't fight another rich man's war. Why do you think that is? And how can we use it to build anti-war consciousness?
Well, I could jump in here and maybe others can fill in if you want to add. Well, I think that that's an expression of that's a really important observation of the way in which the unpopularity of this war is being expressed. I mean, no working class person in this country has any reason why they'd want to go to war. There's no reason why anyone in this country would want to kill or be killed for a war that is being waged in order to make the billionaires have more money, to take control of another country's natural resources. In fact, the issues that everyday people face right now are here in our communities, in our neighborhoods. People don't have healthcare. People don't have access to education. Millions of children don't have enough food to eat. There are very fixable problems. There, the resources to fix those problems exist here, and those in sitting in the White House, whether they're Democrats or Republicans, would prefer to be waging wars and sending working class people to do their dirty work in other places rather than fix those problems. People say, I don't want to fight a war for Israel. Well, I think that's where we can step in and we can clarify things for people. We can say, that's right. We agree with you. We don't want to fight a war for Israel, but you know, actually whose war this is? This is actually the US's war. This is Trump's war. This is Trump in the White House right now is the one calling the shots right here. And we have to know that, because we have to direct our energy at making that clear and building consciousness among our communities to stand up and say, not in our name, not with our tax dollars, and not with our children. We're not going to fight this war. This is not our war. So I think those are the moments where we can intervene with information, and people will be very happy to engage in that conversation. And the website that was saved, that was shared below, is an initiative, the Stop Trump's Wars, or you can also go to Answer Coalition/Iran. It can be a tool for you in having those conversations. On the website, you'll get a toolkit, and in the toolkit, there are downloadable posters, there are downloadable social media graphics, and you'll take a look at the posters, because the posters are educational materials. Inside the posters are agitational points that explain to people why this war actually is connected to the issues that we face. Why is Trump spending $1 billion a day when people don't have access to healthcare, when millions of people don't have access to healthcare? So you can use those, you can download it, print it out, take it to your local coffee shop and put it up. And then how many people go get coffee that day? You know, hundreds of people may stop in and get a coffee and see it, and it will spark a conversation, because we need this to become something that people are not, everyone's talking about it, everyone's thinking about it, but people may feel like there's nothing to be done about it. Well, there is, and the first step to that is getting into those conversations, sparking those conversations, and building with people who are against this war. So I think that that's a really good observation. I think it's an opening, it's a starting point. The openings will come in many different shapes and forms, but they're opportunities for us to build with our neighbors and build with our communities against this war.
Yeah, thank you so much, Leanne. Would anyone else like to jump in? All right. Great. Well, luckily we have a lot of questions, so we're going to roll on to the next one. And Leanne, you pointed out that, you know, billions of dollars a day goes to this war, right? And that is how the US war machine works. It acts as though it has unlimited funds, but it's really the people who are paying for it, who are making this happen, and who are at least, like, you know, the resource that the ruling class is extracting all that wealth from. And that's one of those points that we can use in basically any setting, right? No matter what you do, where you live, where you go to school, working class people know that that money could be spent to fix some ill of society, some people's needs, right? So what I want to ask is, there's a number of people in this webinar that are asking different questions. How do I bring this type of messaging to my union? That was one question. My school was another question. And there was one person who said, you know, I'm a teenager in a conservative town. How can I talk about this? So in these different settings, how do you think that we can connect the anti-war message to what people are facing every single day?
I could jump in. I think we need to think as organizers. Whether we are one person in a room full of people that may not think differently from us, whether we are in a dinner table talking to our, and thinking like an organizers, thinking what interests do the people in this space hold? What are the struggles that they are facing? And you start from the material conditions that people are facing, not the imposition of your views. And so if you are in a conservative space and people have conservative values, where is a kernel of truth in that conservative space? If they say that they are for the protection of life, then why would you support the bombing of children? Why would you support the bombing of, civilians? Why would you continue to allow your tax-paying dollars to go into destruction and not, healthcare in this country, and not education in this country, and not housing in this country? And that doesn't mean that, obviously you're devaluing the lives of those in other countries. What you are doing is tackling what other people's interest is, rather than going from what you understand to be the main argument, if that makes any sense. So thinking as an organizer is important in any of these settings. For students, the question of, debt, like the fact that there's so many young people that have to get into debt to be able to go to school is huge. It's trillions of dollars in collective debt of those who actually had the opportunity to go to college, but weren't able to afford to pay for it. And only poor people have to get loans to go to college. And so, can we in many ways connect the amount of investment in the war machine rather than education? It is possible in the wealthiest country in the world for people to receive free education from pre-K all the way to graduate school. That is possible. That is not irrational. That is not, naive. That is not idealistic. It is completely possible. But there isn't any type of political will, and there is not a prioritizing of anything that is life-giving in this capitalist system. It's all about profit, and war is profitable for a lot of people. Again, so it's making the connections, I think, and having the ability to identify what are the interests and what are the struggles that people are facing. We live in a society where political organizations were replaced by, the nonprofit industrial complex, and therefore we have immigrant rights folks working here, folks that are working gender issues here, folks that are working police, against police brutality there. We need to find a way of connecting all of these different struggles because they are connected. And so we just simply have to figure out ways in which we can bring forth information, but also making connections that make sense for people in their day-to-day life. And that means that we ourselves need to become educated in the history of how did our society become so fragmented? Why did it become so fragmented? And who does it benefit? And then move forward with, our history of anti-war and anti-imperialism, because it is not a fringe position. It is something that has been as American as apple pie. Since the 1800s, there has been a movement in this country that is anti-war and anti-imperialist. And the billionaires, the capitalist class, have done all they have wanted to and have intended to erase that history. We have to be able to bring that forth and rebuild this movement strongly if we want to be able to end these wars.
Really, really excellent point, Claudia. And you're right that as long as US imperialism has existed, there's been an anti-war movement. And as we always say, repression breeds resistance. So keeping alive those struggles, studying them together, and really starting with the material conditions, like you said, listening to people and understanding what it is they actually care about is really the key to organizing and to winning someone over, but also learning yourself as you have these conversations. So really appreciate that. And I think that was a really excellent wrap up because it touched on all of the different elements of this, how we can bring this to unions, to schools, even to our neighborhoods, right? And communities that we live in, because this is a message that is very popular. So many people are against this war. There's a mass opposition, and it's our duty to actually fight against this war machine and bring an end to the war and a new system about. So with that, I want to thank all of our presenters once again. You all did an excellent job at clarifying a lot of this and helping people understand what the task is ahead of us. So I hope that everyone appreciated these speeches and these conversations and the Q&A. I want to thank everyone who joined all of our presenters. So yeah, we will go ahead and close with one more announcement, which is that I want to thank everybody who has tuned into the webinar. I hope you enjoyed the presentations. And I hope that you got something out of also the materials that were shared, right? There's so much study that we can do, but at the same time, we want to organize, we want to fight back, we want to mobilize in the millions, as was said earlier. So I hope you feel inspired and equipped to actually build the anti-war movement, because it can only be built with people power, right? So I know I am excited. I know that I will continue to move this work forward. I hope you will all join me and all of our excellent organizers and speakers tonight. And as a final reminder, we invite you all to join the PSL Action Network at pslweb.org/action to receive invitations to more webinars like this. But you also get monthly shipments of educational materials, as well as materials you can use in these day-to-day conversations that break things down in a way that people can really understand. And you'll also receive calls to action to help build the movement, because we have to stay active to build the Action Network and the socialist movement. So our next Action Network webinar is going to be next Wednesday, March 18th at the same time. That's 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern. We're going to drop the link to register in the chat right now. And we're also going to send the website one more time for the posters and some resources there. So we'll go ahead and drop those links. We're very excited, and we hope that you will join us in this movement and spread the word, because we really need every single person on this webinar and the people you're connected to. So share these resources, sign up and register to join the next webinar, and also invite your friends, family, your coworkers, even your schoolmates, right? So we look forward to seeing you not only at the next webinar, but also in the streets, at events, all sorts of things that are being done in the anti-war movement across the country. So I hope you all have a good night, and we will see you soon. Power to the people.
Power to the people, y'all. They can play another song. All right.
I just want to ask a question. Who really cares? Save a world in despair.
I don't think we need to stay for the song. I don't think we need to stay for the song. Okay, well, I mean, listen, like these types of spy streams are really difficult for me because, like, listen, not everyone in my chat has the same opinion, obviously. Although, you know, generally speaking, the smart people agree with me. But you know what? If you want to be dumb, I guess that is your business. I guess what I'm trying to say is, like, obviously, I am completely against what Trump is doing in Iran. And so I find myself in an awkward position when we're watching the left do anti-war webinars, because I'm just like, a lot of it I agree with. Now, do I agree with the left that this is Trump's war and that Israel is not calling the shots? No. That's like retarded. That's like one of the most retarded things I've ever heard the left say. And I'm pretty sure the woman who said that is Jewish, just fucking saying. And it's just like, you know what? No. Anyone with a working brain knows exactly what this is. And actually, it's even funny that they framed it that way, because these calls tell us what their framing is. And obviously, what they are hearing from their members is this is Israel's war, because the left does not like Israel. They said it on the webinar. Israel is the settler colonist. Israel is capitalism. Settler colonialism means capitalism. It means stealing the land from the indigenous people and privatizing it so the indigenous people can't use it. That is what capitalism is. It's private property ownership. And so it's not, the left does not like Israel because they believe that Israel stole the land from the Palestinians, and the Palestinians are in a glorious uprising decolonization against the evil settler colonists. That is the issue. It's not that Israel is Jewish. It's not that the Palestinians are Muslim. It's literally that Israel stole the land and the Palestinians are trying to take the land back. That's it. That is what the land back movement is in America. The land back movement is the idea of giving America existing on stolen land, America being created by colonization, stealing the land from the indigenous people. The left hates America and wants to overthrow capitalism in America for exactly the same reason as it hates Israel and wants to overthrow capitalism there. It is always the issue. And the left sees this issue of the war in Iran as Israel expanding its territory in the Middle East, the United States expanding its territory in the Middle East, whether or not we agree with them on that interpretation, which is stupid and wrong, that the United States is leading this. They're still saying these settler colonists are trying to steal the land. This is about the natural resources. That is what this war is about. To the left, every issue relates back to capitalism. We heard them say it several times. This is about education. This is about healthcare. They're equating an anti-war consciousness that they want to awaken, the anti-war consciousness of the American people. They're equating that with class consciousness, which is about waking up to the fact that you are part of an oppressed class. I obviously don't agree with the left's interpretation on things, but it is actually very difficult for me to watch these events, being that I am opposed to the war in Iran. I think Trump is a massive fucking cuck to Israel. I think the whole thing is stupid and wrong and quite frankly immoral. And so on this issue, I find myself more in agreement with the left than I do the right. And that actually should be terrifying to everyone. I mean, listen, I'm as bad as anti-communist, as anti-socialist as they come. I have literally dedicated my life to studying and understanding the far left in order to provide intelligence with which to defeat them. There is almost no one that is going to be more against their ideas and vision for the world than I am. However, if I'm being honest and if I'm being emotionally detached from the situation, right now, the far left is actually speaking to more of the issues that I care about than the fucking Republican Party and Trump and MAGA. Literally, I have nothing, and I mean nothing, in common with Trump or MAGA or the Republican Party, with the exception of James Fishbeck. James Fishbeck rules. But that's it. That's it. James Fishbeck is the only good one. Literally the only good one. Thomas Massey rules too, but Thomas Massey's a libertarian. Literally, those are the only good people. And if I look at the talking points of the GOP or Fox News or the establishment or even Trump's White House, I don't identify with any of them. I don't actually agree with any of them. I think Trump isn't taking any of the problems of the far left seriously. I think that Trump is cucking on mass deportations because they lost to the left in major cities and wouldn't hinge into reality and deal with it. Like literally, the only appealing thing that Trump has done for me is no taxes for tips, which that rules and that should definitely stay. But like nothing else. Trump and the Republicans have done nothing else for me. They have not spoken to any of the issues I care about at all. And now they're pursuing a fucking regime change war in the Middle East against the wishes of literally every fucking person because Israel wants them to. And it's just kind of like, okay, maybe I disagree with the left on the mechanics of this. Maybe I disagree with the left's interpretation that it's the United States leading us into war in Iran and not Israel. I can disagree with that. I also understand why they're against it, which is about capitalism. I'm against it because it's immoral. But like they're at least speaking to the anti-war sentiment. They are at least speaking to anti-war people. And it seems as though the left is now shifting from solely focusing on anti-ICE protesting, which they are still doing, by the way. They're still doing the anti-ICE protesting and the anti-ICE signal groups and all that. It's just that conservative media stopped reporting on it. Cam Higby, the great exposure of the signal groups, even though I talked about the signal groups for like 9 months before he even knew about them, Cam Higby had stopped reporting on the signal groups because that's not what he does. He just follows the news cycle wherever it fucking goes. And so now no one in conservative media is reporting on the anti-ICE stuff. So everyone thinks it stopped. It hasn't, by the way. You can still look online. You can still look at their social media. They're doing all the same shit they were before. And now the left is focusing their efforts into being the anti-war movement. Well, the vast majority of people in the country right now oppose the war. The vast majority of people in the country are looking for outspoken advocates to say, Trump, what the actual fuck, cut this shit out. There is a significant amount of people that are going to be swayed by that argument. And again, right now, if I'm just calling balls and strikes, the Republican Party is speaking to zero of the issues I actually care about. And in fact, I'm on the opposite position than them on some really important stuff. The left is actually speaking to one of the issues I care about. And I agree with them in principle on a lot of the anti-war stuff. And that to me is very alarming. Again, I'm not a communist. I'm not a socialist, even though the right likes to accuse me of that all the time because they're fucking retards. But just, this is about balls and strikes, guys. It's about balls and strikes. So now think about the average person who hasn't, like I have, dedicated their lives to studying the left. And they're just average, there's normies out in the world. And Trump is continuing to push another fucking regime change war in the Middle East. They're not ruling out the possibility of a draft. Things are too expensive. People can't afford food. People can't afford housing. People sure as shit can't afford gas. Trump tried to steal all the oil from Venezuela to keep gas prices down, but they're still not coming down. These are your realities. You're having trouble figuring out how to pay rent. Your healthcare sucks. Your kid needs a car and they can't have one because you can't afford one, and you can't even afford gas to put in the car anyway. Your childcare is too expensive. Food at the grocery store is out of control. And Trump is going to war on behalf of Israel in the Middle East, which no one fucking wants. That's option A. Option B is the left out in the streets protesting and waving their anti-war signs and saying no war with Iran, no war with Iran, no war with Iran, no war for oil, no war for oil, no war for oil. The left is actually speaking to the issues that you care about. We just saw the Working Families Party candidate earlier tonight talking about how, you know, it's about childcare affordability and healthcare affordability and education and food prices and gas prices. All of the kitchen table issues that Republicans claim to care about, but that now ignore. Those are the people that are speaking to the normies. And by the way, listen, the PSL obviously is getting more money because that ad was not that bad that they premiered on that. And if they get that ad on TV or they get that ad all over social media, that's going to reach a lot of fucking people. And that's going to say the only solution to the pro-war, you know, regime change bullshit in Iran is the socialist left. So I don't really know what to say. I'm not in charge of anything having to do with the Republicans. I'm not in charge of anything having to do with the GOP. I'm certainly not in charge of anything having to do with Trump. I have literally no decision-making power in this equation. I am but a lowly woman in New Hampshire who sits in my second bedroom and watches socialism on the internet constantly and provides the best intelligence that literally is available for free to everyone in our government and everyone in politics if they wanted to remove their heads from their asses and fucking listen for once in their fucking lives. But they don't want to listen. They only want to advance a bullshit narrative. They're lying to Trump and telling him most people are in favor of this war when that's just provably not true. And so here we are. Here we are. Yeah, not my circus, not my monkeys. I provided the best analysis and best intelligence on this issue. The Trump administration should be watching all of this stuff on their own. I shouldn't even need to do it, to be quite honest, but I'm better at this than the FBI, so that's the way it goes. It's all so tiring. Yeah, that's it, Reagan. That's it. It's all so tiring. Yep. Anyway, though, very successful spy stream. We will be doing at least one, if not two, spy streams tomorrow. Little earlier, round about 6:30, 6:45-ish. I will be letting you guys know when they are exactly. Thanks to the generosity of people earlier in the stream, we will be making those completely public and available to everyone. So thank you guys for supporting by sending in channel memberships and super chats and stuff like that. I really do appreciate it. I am out of here. I'm gonna go to bed. I'm tired. I don't feel well. I've been watching too much socialism already today. I'm out of here. I will see you guys tomorrow. Thank you for stopping by. Please make sure you mount the like button on the way out the door. Please make sure you subscribe to the channel if you have not already. And I will see you guys tomorrow. Bye.
How are you feeling? How long have you been here?
3 months, May 17th.
And what brought you?
That's difficult to answer. people dislike me because I am not completely like them.
I'm not clear. How is it that playing the piano for people has eventually resulted in your being here in the hospital?
That's difficult to answer.